Hey, if I look fatter or... Hey guys, it's Future Molly. So before you watch this video, I guess I'm just sliding in here to say that I actually filmed these clips 2 years ago when I was a senior in high school in 2018, and obviously it is now 2020, it is quarantine, and I'm really only releasing this video not on behalf of the Academy but of my own perspective, because I feel like during this time people are stressed and potentially juniors and seniors might be stressed about applying to academies. I feel like it might help somebody. Like normally I wouldn't really release it because looking back at it, there's a lot of false information that I had talked about that I thought I knew what I was talking about, and I had to cut it out, and I'm really like not even the person I was when I made that video. Like I feel like a lot of growth happens from when you graduate high school to, you know, turning 20 and stuff like that. And so, but like looking back, I think there are maybe some valuable points, and I can answer questions with more accuracy now and like less focus on my experience and myself, because like it's old news for me now and now it's looking ahead to you guys. If I look different, like it's because it literally is 2 years later, but nothing has changed. Like I still went through naps, I went through plebe year, I finished it. Today is technically Herndon, but canceled, so love that. If people are actually genuinely curious about the different experiences you might have, then I'd be happy to answer questions. So I guess just get into the video. Yeah.
Hey guys, it's Molly. Today on my channel I'm going to talk through a college application process that I went through. It's kind of different and if you're here it's probably because you're curious about it, and that is a military college application. Well, I'll just start by saying I applied to 4 colleges, and those colleges included Virginia Tech, Liberty University, the United States Coast Guard Academy, and the United States Naval Academy. I got into Liberty and Virginia Tech, no wait list. The Coast Guard Academy, they offered me a spot on their track team after they put me on their wait list. I'm going to the Naval Academy Prep School. And if you're here, you probably know what that is if you're doing your research, but if you don't, it is basically a prep school where, I mean, it is what it sounds like. If you're not excelling in every area that you should be excelling in, they send you there. So area for me would be math. They take it based off of so many different factors, such as like if you didn't get a congressional nomination, which I'll talk about, if your test scores weren't hitting the bar, if your grades weren't particularly high, if you didn't pass your physical test, if you didn't have any sports or leadership. Well, actually the leadership part, pretty much everybody that gets into NAPS, which is the acronym for the prep school, or the Naval Academy, all have leadership experience, so you can't really lack in that. That's something that's very important. But I'm just going to talk through it because I know when I applied, there were no videos on this topic. However, I did have a lot of influencers in my life that helped me get through it, so I didn't really need to research, but there are a lot of people I know that are the first generation Naval Academy applicants, or any military college applicant this can apply to, but more particularly the Navy. So I just have a list of things I'm gonna go through, and let's just get started. So first of all, my background is that I have 5 siblings, and 3 of them went to a military academy, and my other sibling went regular college, and my other sibling went regular college, ROTC. So I have a little bit of everything that I could pick and choose from. For a really long time, my dream school was Virginia Tech, but my brother who graduated from the Naval Academy really wanted me to apply for the summer seminar back when I was a junior. And if you don't know what the Naval Academy summer seminar is, get to know it, because if you're a senior, the time has come and gone for you to apply to this, which means nothing. It's not gonna take a hit on your application. But if you're a junior, I guess if you're a rising junior, if you're a rising junior, this is really important. So I did not want to go to the Naval Academy. I was like, everybody's so strict, nobody has a sense of humor. So I said, okay, fine, I'll apply for the summer seminar. If you didn't know, when you apply for the summer seminar, it's a 5-day summer camp where they treat you like a plebe, and a plebe is a freshman there. So I applied. When you open this application, it's your preliminary application, which means that's like the first half of what you need to do to become an official candidate, once you're an official candidate, you'll get an email. Some people won't pass this mark, but I really wouldn't worry about it because that doesn't happen too often. Normally, everybody becomes an official candidate unless you have like a criminal charge or have a dependent or something kind of out of the ordinary. So when you apply to the Naval Academy, no matter who you are, recruited athlete or not, you need to get a congressional nomination. This nomination can either come, if you are a legacy, it can come from the president. If you're somebody who's not a legacy, such as myself, it can come from the vice president, my congressperson, or my 2 senators. And if you are a special athlete or something, it can come from the superintendent, but that's not very typical. So how my congressional nominations went was that I applied for the 4 that I was eligible for. I got an interview for the congresswoman and a senator, and then my 3rd senator didn't offer interviews to anyone. It was just based online only. And then the vice president rejected me like flat out. They didn't do interviews either. So the senator that didn't offer interviews didn't take me, and the senator and the congresswoman that did offer interviews both granted me an interview. So really quick story. I was at a cheer competition and I was about to go out on the mat and I got 2 emails at the same time. I actually got 3. So one of them was that the congresswoman was gracious enough to grant me an interview. I was super, super, super excited. And then the second one was that the senator said, unfortunately, we can't offer you an interview. And then the third one was that they were like, okay, we take that back. We're going to give you an interview. And I was like, this is so weird, but whatever, yay. I was super excited. I called my mom and dad because just getting an interview is a hurdle. Just jumping straight into the interviews, I had my congresswoman first, and it was my first ever intense interview, and I'm glad I got this one over with first because it was scarier than the other one. Basically, I was sitting at a table in front of, I think it was 4 different branches of military people, and they all just for 30 minutes like nonstop hammered me. So this varies depending on your state, but in my state, I live in the #1 most competitive district in America, so that kind of puts a lot of pressure on. I know people are gonna ask my stats and stuff, so I'll just like put them out there. They're not amazing or anything. My GPA coming out of high school final was a 4.15, which in my area, that wasn't even like the top 20%. I think I was top 22% or something like that. So like just to put it in perspective, like that wasn't amazing. Most of these people applying, like I was in the lobby for these interviews and people were like, yeah, I'm trying to choose between the Naval Academy and Dartmouth, and some people were like, yeah, I got like a full ride to Harvard, but like I'm just feeling it out. And I was like, okay. So you don't have to be like super valedictorian to apply to these, so please don't get discouraged because of that. I had basically straight A's, but I went in with a low test score. At the time, I went in with a 25 ACT and like an 1100 SAT, so they were very, very below average. That's one thing that I'm gonna express, is that if you get something that's not hitting the best it can be, you have to keep trying. I took 5 standardized tests by the end of December, and December is pretty late into the application process, so even if you don't get it by the time you were hoping for, you still have to keep trying. I ended with a super score of 29, which was like okay. I got like a 34 on my English, but a 26 on my math. So in this interview, they kind of hammered me on my low test scores and the fact that I was an athlete. I can make a separate video on the athletic process about this because I was recruited, but I wasn't a blue chip, but I was kind of heavily recruited, as in I'm not a walk-on, I'm like a guaranteed on. I don't really know. Anyway, so this interview was hard in particular because they did hammer me on the fact, like they kind of just jumped to a random conclusion at the very beginning of the interview saying that I was just going there for sports, and I didn't have an easy way to talk them out of it because it was my first interview and I was really intimidated. So coming out of that interview, the benefit was that I learned a lot about how to handle myself and the right thing to say and how to respond, and even though I came out super unconfident, I knew that I had one more chance. And even though the congressperson is your best bet to get a nomination because they hand out the most to a small group of people, I still had the senator. Going into my senator interview, I was already lacking confidence because of my poor congresswoman interview, and as soon as I got into the lobby, they were like, oh, our baseline is that everybody has a bottom score of a 1200 on the SAT. If you don't have that, then we're not going to interview you. And I was like, then why am I here? Now, what I wanted to put out there is that interviews can be the thing that strengthens your weakness. And when I say that, I mean, I didn't get picked for one of my senators off the bat because he's the one that didn't offer interviews, and he saw me on paper. And what he saw on paper was that test score. That at the time was my weakness. Me on paper, I don't look as good as I can portray myself in an interview. My best advice I can give to you in an interview is just be relaxed, be personable. Even though these people do kind of control your future, you can also make it so that you are comfortable while being of the utmost respect. So what I would do is they're going to ask you for the last question, is there any questions you have for me? And what I would always say is like something that would like tap into them as a person. So I would be like, what's your favorite experience you had at the academy, or what made you want to go into the Navy, or whatever. And there was one interviewer in particular that I feel like he was pretty like strict, and I just couldn't crack him until that question came about, and then he just like the floodgates opened, and I just felt his personality for the first time. Like, not in a negative way, like he was doing as he would, and their goal is to intimidate you as much as possible, but once I was able to tap that open, I feel like that might have differentiated me from other applicants. And they might also ask you to, like, is there anything you want us to know that you haven't already mentioned? And that's where I gave my point that my test scores don't reflect how I study, they don't reflect my work ethic. So I'm just saying, don't give up hope. If you think you're at the bottom of the barrel, you might be, but you can float to the top if you are a personable person. And what helped me with that probably was that I did improv comedy, and I was like in theater, and that's also something they like and they value is diversity among applicants. They don't want somebody who's only sports or only academics. I was varsity cheer, but I was also improv comedy club captain. I put on shows, I did community service, I made films, I was a state runner-up in track, and so like all that put together really was able to even out my low math abilities. On my list I said if you're weak at one thing, strengthen everything else to the best of your ability, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. This also includes like a lot of people try to join as many clubs as they want, and they try to stack using that, and I would say don't necessarily do that unless it's a club you want to be in. I know I asked around during my application, I was like, should I join honor societies? Like, I don't really want to be in them, but like they'll add cords on my gown and stuff like that, and everybody was like, no, like they're gonna ask you about the clubs you're in when you're in your interviews, and they're gonna see right through you if they know, like they'll just know that you don't want to be in that club if you start explaining it. Alright, another thing that I have in these is the more unique things about my application. So it is a rising known factor that being a girl applying for a military application is less common. So there's about a 25 to 75 ratio at the Naval Academy of female midshipmen to male midshipmen, and it's higher than it's ever been. This year, the class of 2022 was 28%, which I'm pretty sure is the highest it ever has been, and that's really good. And so there was nothing really to touch on this because it didn't affect my application. I feel like the ratio of girls getting accepted out of the girl pile and boys getting accepted out of the boy pile was both 8%, so it didn't up my value or anything. But overall there's just less girl applicants. I'm trying to think of ways that it may have helped me, but I really wouldn't rely on it. Like, they don't strive for girls anymore. I feel like they used to back in the 90s when they were trying to diversify their campus, but now it's pretty diverse as is, and if you're minority, that's different. If you have a very, very different background, they'll definitely value that, but as being like me, a majority girl, it may have separated me from my peers in my area because my area is like suburbia. It has a large military population, so there's like just like a lot of white boys around me, but and so it might have separated me, but I like to think that like I was just as qualified as they were. There's no level that you are able to sink below because you're a girl. You have to rise up and be the best that you can be. So I didn't really get into summer seminar that much, but I feel like that's a really, really important topic. That is where I learned that I wanted to go to the Naval Academy. Some people are set before and they change their mind after going to this, and some people are like me. I wasn't gonna go. I wasn't gonna apply, and then I went there and everything just changed for me. It opened up so many doors. I met so many people that gave me connections to other people that I ultimately needed, which is a very important part of summer seminar. So when I said that summer seminar doesn't necessarily get you ahead as a candidate just for getting accepted, it doesn't get you ahead, but in a physical paper sense, but it gets you ahead in a sense that if you reach out to the connections that you think you'll need, that can get you ahead. And that's where I learned that if I could get into that school, that's the best possible school I could be at. I was able to put top 20% on my application. However, top 20% doesn't get you into Harvard. It doesn't get you into Yale. It wouldn't even get me into like University of Virginia or anything. I know like the best possible school I could go to, the highest ranked, the most well known is the Naval Academy, and I wasn't going to settle for less if I had any sort of chance of getting in there. And what was revealed to me that I had a chance of getting in there was that writing up my resume, I was like, dang, I actually have a lot more than I thought I did. And then ultimately after summer seminar, I met with the track coaches, which is something fantastic that they do. On the second to last day, I think, they separate you by sport, and they just have like a little seminar with each sport coach, and you write down your stats on a paper, and if they think they have potential, they look at you as a recruit. And so that's how I got recruited, which is what I'm talking about when I say using it as a tool to further yourself later on in the game. So the recruitment helped me later on in the game. So that leads me into making connections. So I think I made like 5 different connections when I was there, and then I used those connections to make more connections, and it just kept coming on. So the best connections I got were like the head track coach. They get so many emails all the time. They'd kind of just like look at it and scroll through. Having your name permanently in somebody's head is really, really important, because if the staff knows your name, then they can't really ignore you anymore. I think I emailed my admissions counselor like once a month, updating him on all of my new activities and my schoolwork and stuff. I would text the track coach every time I had a meet. If you, for some reason, there's like no way you can make a connection, then make an excuse to find a connection. Like there's a way, and there's social media now, so there's really no excuse not to get to know people. If you are on this social media platform right now, you can literally find somebody on YouTube and ask them for a connection and get to know them. It's important that when you try to reach out to those people that you follow up. The teachers that you want to write your letters of recommendation, very, very important that you participate in class. There are some teachers that you might think don't like you unless you get a good grade, and I thought the same. But when I asked both of these teachers for recommendations, they were wildly optimistic, and their recommendations just spoke very highly, more so of my work ethic than my grades. Always make good connections with your teachers, participate in class. Don't be like the kid that sits in the corner and just gets ignored, because then they're not going to know what to write about you. Also, something I found that I didn't think I would find is that like my teachers really were interested in my process, and since it's kind of a rare thing, mostly my science and math teachers were really interested, and I didn't really let them in on what I was doing until I asked for recommendation. And I get the vibe that they wish they knew sooner, because they kept, like, there was a few in particular that would like follow up with me, and when I got in they were like over the moon, and I was like, I didn't think you would care that much, and they really do care. So all I'm saying is like include your teachers in this process, because it's important and they want to be a part of it, especially if you're one of their good or if you're one of their good or participatory students. I don't know if it's necessary to hit on this, but I guess I just will since I'm explaining my whole process. There's an ROTC unit at my school, and I did not do ROTC, and I did theater over ROTC and a language, and they really, in my interviews, valued my theater, which I think is ironic because I chose it over ROTC, which you'd think that they would value more, but I was told on so many occasions that public speaking is like the best thing you can go into this college with, which is just important, like for good first impressions and everything, and not being afraid to speak up, ask questions, even if your questions are dumb, if you say it with confidence, like stuff like that. And then the two last things I have to talk about is in your interviews, in particular, be yourself. And this ties in with the whole like don't join a club that you're not into. Don't on your application put that you're going to be a math major if you don't like math, if you're not actually going to do that. Like for me, my brother told me it would have been beneficial for me to put that I was a math major because they love STEM majors, but I didn't know that at the time, and I put English. But if I had put math, it just wouldn't have lined up, and they would have been like, why are you lying? Your math scores are low, your English scores are high, you clearly like English more. I mean, like, not that that's like a direct indicator that I like English more, but it is kind of sketchy that you're gonna say you're a math major if your math scores are low and stuff like that. Also, you don't have to be like die-hard military. Like I said, I didn't join ROTC, I joined theater, and they like to see individualism. They like to see somebody who's different, somebody who has a different story. You can bring new experiences upon yourself, like doing mission trips or whatever. It's just all dependent on the type of person you are, and if you're unmotivated, you will not find a way to get past this barrier. And the final thing I have to say is when you're applying, so for me, once again, I can make a separate recruited athlete video. It is easy to get tied up in the fact that you will be like a D1 athlete, so I'm just saying if you're gonna go there, make sure you're going there so that you can serve at least 9 years in the Navy. And if you didn't know, that means that you're serving 4 years at the Naval Academy and 5 years promised afterward. And yeah, if you guys are interested in the athletic portion of this video, let me know. I'll totally explain it. It was pretty complicated, but for now, that's all I have to say. Also, let me know if you want me to explain prep school. I definitely will be making videos on prep school because that is so overlooked. It's not uncommon to get into, but it's definitely not common to get into. Out of like 20,000 applicants, 16,000 applicants, 250 are accepted into this prep school and guaranteed to next year's freshman class. And the thing is, I don't know that much about it yet because I haven't even gone there yet. Hey, if I look fatter or... But if you guys want me to make a video before I go off, I ship off in 20 days, I can tell you like how the rest of my application is gonna go, as far as I know, and what I've had to do since I got accepted, like enlist in the Naval Reserve and stuff, and it gets pretty complicated, so I'm not gonna include all that on this. But that was my application story, so this video is probably really long, but thank you for watching, and I'll keep you guys updated. Bye!